Hi folks, this is Paul Padda coming to you on the Paul Padda podcast on July 3rd from Red Chimp Studios here in Las Vegas. Today we have a wonderful guest, someone who's going to really give you some amazing insights into just life in general and how to navigate career and put yourself in a position for success. Today I'm joined by Dr. Zannah Hackett. Thank you so much. And I know you go by Dr. Zannah, right?
Right.
Thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Excited to share.
So I know you're the head of the Youre Institute, and you've developed a program called the Ultimate Life Tool.
Correct.
And I'm familiar with that because I've actually taken the test, and I was blown away. I'm a little skeptical, I will tell you. In the beginning, I was a little skeptical about these sort of things, but I was blown away at how accurate it seemed to be. And it really causes you to introspect and start thinking about yourself and seeing yourself in a different light. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you got into what you're doing now, and what is the Youre Institute?
The Youre Institute is an educational entity that specializes in a methodology called the Knowledge of You. Y-O-U is an acronym for your own understanding. And the methodology serves as the impetus for the Ultimate Life Tool technology, which we reference as the ULT. The ULT is a 10-minute online advanced human assessment. It is very different from psychometric tools.
Right.
We like to refer to it as a physimetric tool because it takes into consideration physics. The world that we live in is a physical world.
Yes.
Where up until now we've relied most heavily on psychological interpretations. Psychology is a very important piece of the puzzle, but it's only a small part of human nature. And what the Ultimate Life Tool affords us is the ability to access physics where psychology actually has a home in physics, but we get to see the whole person rather than just a part of that person.
Okay.
And in many cases, psychological or psychometric tools fall short of recognizing what took the test as it relates to a person's nature. And I can qualify that for you if you'd like for me to. Okay, we all know who we are, but we don't know what we are. And we are first a what before we're a who.
Yeah.
And in fact, we're as unique as our thumbprint. There are no two people alike on the planet.
That's true.
And what we're trying to do most often is turn other people into ourselves. You know, what works for you does not work for me, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And for me to make suggestions based on what works for me and a majority of my clients would fall short of ever really helping you thrive or reach your full potential.
You know, as a trial lawyer, and just to pick up on that point, there's a concept that we think about as trial attorneys, which is called bias confirmation. And that the pitfall a lot of lawyers fall into is that, or even juries or just people in general, is that our biases confirm what we want them to confirm. Like, we see the world through the lens of our own biases. And sometimes you have to step away from that to really get a true picture of what's going on. And so I think that's interesting what you just said in terms of we kind of look to people as a reflection of what either we want ourselves to be or what we see them through some type of prism.
Exactly. I always say that our tool affords you to see a person through the eyes of nature versus the rhetoric of man or socially imposed opinions.
Okay.
Psychology, you know, when we try to create an assessment using psychological endeavors, what happens is we quantify man's opinion.
Yeah.
Okay? Well, in this test, we quantify gravity, electromagnetism, and nuclear force. We live in a base 10 reality. And the world that we live in is a math problem. And the ULT subscribes to what we call the natural mathematics of man.
Okay, break that down in simple terms for the average person.
Okay. The natural mathematics of man basically says we live in the third dimension.
Okay.
And the third dimension is governed by what we call a law of three.
Is there a first and second dimension, or just a third dimension?
The ones we only care about are the ones that are on the desktop and the ones that operate the HTML.
Okay.
Our desktop, our hair color, our eye color, how tall we are, how short we are, whether we have long fingers, thick waist, freckles,
Yeah.
all of that means something. We did not show up like this by mistake.
Yeah.
Example, when I look at a cactus, I know looking at that cactus that it does really well in the sun, it doesn't take much moisture, it doesn't make much shade, and I probably shouldn't hug it. I don't need to go to a university to figure that out. I don't even need to know that it's called a cactus.
Right.
I can see it with the naked eye. What the third dimension affords us is physical law. Physical law says everything you need to know is on that desktop, just like a computer.
Yeah.
You look at those icons, if you have like Microsoft Money Works and you have Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator and Internet Explorer, you know looking at that desktop that kind of what it's capable of. You know, but that desktop shows up because there is an HTML behind the scenes.
Right.
That's kind of where psychology lives.
Okay.
Okay? Psychology is a little less visible. And unfortunately, when we get hungry, angry, lonely, tired, very famous acronym for recovery, the HTML or the DOS of our existence can go a little haywire. We can get a virus, and we don't show up so good on our desktop. Those parts of us, we're very complicated. We're not just a red, yellow, blue, or a 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
We're very complicated and we're dynamic. We're not static. So the ULT is a dynamic tool. It takes two things into consideration: time and energy. We need to know how old the person is. Time is it's like a clock. It's divided into 12 months, and those 12 phases on a clock also reference ages.
Yeah.
So age 0 to 3, 3 to 7, 7 to 12, 12 to 16. Each one of those intervals has rules and protocols and natural expectations that need to be met in order for that person to thrive.
One of the things I picked up on in our conversations outside this podcast is that it seems to me like there's a big focus in your analysis on physical energy. And physical energy is sort of a manifestation of one's mental state of mind, right? So this is a big part of the ultimate life tool, right? Is assessing physical or energy with one's state of mind and what's going on. So in terms of marrying those two concepts, is that something unique to what you've developed, or is that already been out in existence?
What we're able to do is to decipher whether their mental state is in alignment with what they are. For example, let's just use a lion, for example.
Yeah.
We expect a lion to roar. If we give that lion a test and the test said he chirps, I'm going, he's having an identity crisis. I need to talk to him.
Right.
He forgot that he was a lion.
Right.
And it's very easy to do that because our environment imposes social opinions on us. Our parents, our teachers, our mentors, they all have ideas for us.
Yeah.
But what we first have to do is decide how active that person is, how passive they are, how positive, how negative, what they can tolerate in terms of people, places, and things, how they communicate, relate, download, and commit information to memory, what their perception of life is. Some people see the cup half empty, and some people see it half full. Both are good.
Right.
And some people see it in a neutral fashion.
So there's no really good or bad. There's putting yourself in a position to excel based on your personality type. This reminds me of a quote I read recently, and it was about somebody who said, and I can't remember the exact quote, but paraphrasing, that the biggest regret people have when they are at the end of their life is that they've lived a life based on the expectations of others rather than the life that they wanted to live. And that's interesting because I think a lot of people go into professions or careers that maybe don't necessarily fulfill them. I see this a lot in my profession. I know a lot of lawyers who, after 10 years, are kind of burnt out. Sometimes they just have I've seen lawyers leave and go become a chef and they say that's something that was my dream as a kid, is I wanted to be a chef, and my parents had a certain expectation of me, so I went into this profession. And I think that so much of what you do seems to help gear people towards finding the you, right? In the You Institute. I mean, it's really about discovering who you are and what you're best suited to doing, and that would, by nature and definition, put you in a position to excel.
And what you're good at 16 is not always what you're good at 43.
Very true.
So we constantly have to kind of, we put people through the ULT periodically. We change with the seasons, we change with various intervals. You know, we don't look like we did when we're 22.
Yeah,
you know, things change.
Right.
And we need to kind of reassess where we're at, because we have a shelf life and we age.
Yeah.
And we have to honor each interval so that we can work at our optimum. And when we're really aware of what we are, we become aware of why we're here. And we don't have to go on a soul search.
Right, right.
We know why we're here. And that takes a lot of anxiety out of life.
It does, that's true. I've seen that in my own life. I mean, I'm not the same person I was when in my 20s, and I look back on some of the decisions I made and I thought, wow, what was I thinking?
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Seemed like a good idea at the time, and I'm like, but you know, that's the fascinating aspect of life, is that all the experiences that get layered on top of you then start to change your thinking. I mean, people who are super liberal in their 20s become conservative later, or vice versa. I've seen the opposite being true too. So much of what we are influenced by in terms of our upbringing, it's really interesting. Now, I know in your studies or in your testing, you do this thing between silver, a copper, and gold person.
Yeah.
Explain what that is.
I think this would be fun for the audience. This is I call it a takeaway, and I think it's probably one of the easiest things to kind of really get a grip on, and will help your audience understand. The number one reason that relationships fail in business, home, and life is what we call alchemical incompatibility.
Okay.
And we like to use the analogy of ore, O-R-E, gold, silver, and copper. And those are three essential metals in the earth that we use for various reasons, and they have an equal contribution to the vitality.
But you're not putting a value on it. Like a gold person is not necessarily a better person.
No, it's not first, second, third place.
Right.
Okay? Each is, I use the phrase, nature doesn't make mistakes, man does.
That's
These
true.
are,
That's
okay?
a great way.
So golds are highly meticulous, highly refined, very fussy. Silvers are very durable, adaptable, flexible, resilient. They typically have more friends than everybody else. Coppers are a little more tolerant of messes and smells. The more copper you have, the less attention to detail and the less you feel compelled to shower. Like, I have 3 sons. I have one of each. My youngest son, you know, when he was younger, his clothes never found a hanger. And oftentimes he wore that shirt inside out for the second day in a row. Yeah, you know. My oldest son had bolts on his door, so the younger one couldn't get in, you know. The middle son was a silver. I had to sit in between the two because if the copper touched the gold, it was like, ew, Mom. You know, so, but we all have people in our family and in our workplace. We can only stretch so far. Like, I could not have asked those 2 gold and copper brothers to room together and expect them not to lose energy.
Right.
When we lose energy, we come from a place of ignorance. We make poor choices.
Yeah.
When we gain energy, we make intelligent choices. And that's what we reference as, oftentimes behavior lives there. This is where psychology really likes to live.
Yeah.
And it's called nuclear force. It's how we express ourselves. And we're either coming from a place of strength or weakness.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, that resonates with me as a trial lawyer because I see that. You know, when you're in a trial, there's an energy to everything. Collective people being put in a room together, making a decision. the lawyer, how you're perceived, etc. So this is all really fascinating. Can you give our viewers some information on where they would find you? I know you've written a book.
Oh, thank you. I would love to. The book is entitled You and the Ultimate Life Tool by Dr. Zannah Hackett. You can find it on Amazon. The You Institute is in Encinitas, California. The website is theyouinstitute.com, and that's Y-O-U.
Okay.
Theyouinstitute.com. And we are opening up an East Coast office next month.
Great.
Yeah,
that's really
so
fascinating.
in Hilton Head, South Carolina.
Ah, wow.
Yeah,
we'll get into that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you though, in terms of like, you provide counseling for not only like organizations, but do you do one-on-one counseling?
We do a lot of private counseling, a lot of couples counseling, work a lot with teens in crisis or just students trying to figure out which college to go to. You don't want to put a gold kid in a copper college,
Yeah,
you know.
True. Good point.
So they will thrive much better if they're appropriately placed. So there's a lot of things that we do wherever there's a human in the equation, we fit.
Okay.
We have worked with the legal profession in jury selection and things like that in the past.
Okay.
So it does help.
Excellent. All right, we're going to take a little break now.
Great.
This is a section that we call Paul Padda for the people, and it's just like a little tip that I throw out to give people some information about a legal situation that's helpful to them. So with that, we'll go to a break. Paul Padda for the people. Hi folks, this is Paul Padda for the people with another helpful tip. You know, I get this question a lot. People tell me, hey Paul, I know you're a personal injury attorney, you've given me some good information, and you've told me I shouldn't talk to the insurance company of the driver who caused the accident. What about talking to my own insurance company? What's wrong with that? Well, there really isn't anything wrong with that. You do have a duty to cooperate with your own insurance company and talk to them. However, you should be very careful what you say to them because, like a lot of people, you might have what's called UM/UIM coverage. That's just an acronym for uninsured motorists or underinsured motorist coverage. So that means, like, in other words, if the person who causes the accident doesn't have enough insurance, you might have a policy to help cover that. And that policy comes out of your insurance company's pockets, and therefore they may not be super excited about giving you money to necessarily compensate you. As a result, you should be very careful what you say to them. At the same time, because you have a contract with your insurance company, under that contract, you have a duty to cooperate and basically answer any questions that they have for you. However, you should do that with an attorney standing next to you, therefore a person who can guide you and help you answer those questions appropriately. So my tip for you is not that you shouldn't talk to your insurance company, but you should talk to them very cautiously and with guidance from a lawyer on your side. This is Paul Padda for the people with another helpful tip. Hey folks, Paul Padda Podcast. Welcome back. We're with Dr. Zannah Hackett. Dr. Zannah, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really fascinating hearing your insights into basically people. And that's what you do, right? You study people.
I study people.
And you help people. You help people deal with problems and just understanding themselves better to put themselves in a more successful position for life.
Right.
That's my takeaway in a lot of it.
I'm not the only person. We've trained over 100 people in the use of the technology. I have doctors and teachers, educators,
It's a group effort, yes.
Yeah, I have a really great group of highly skilled leading pioneers in the technology.
Well, I took your test, and I was fascinated by some of the questions. And so, just like questions, for example, like, you know, do you have a square jaw, a pointy jaw, or a regular size, or what, I guess just a regular jaw, I don't know what, right? Or do you have large, medium, or small eyes?
Right.
And so I just thought to myself, I was taking this test, I'm like, what's the relevance of this to personality? How did you come up with those questions, and how did you come up with the Ultimate Life Tool test?
Well, there's nothing new on the planet. Okay, so I would love to say I intuited it from some divine source. But the reality is that everything we need to know is right here in front of us in nature. In fact, we mirror the evolution of the planet. You know, one of the things that I've noticed, and this is a little off topic here with your question, our bodies are like vehicles transporting our thoughts around in this lifetime. Our thoughts are like passengers in our car. We need to know which one's legally authorized to drive, okay? And oftentimes we listen to the others, and so we keep going off course. One of the things that I feel we kind of miss the mark on is understanding what kind of vehicle we are. And that is like, some people are like a Lamborghini and some people are like a Ford Escort. Some people are like a Land Rover. And they all have a place in the fabric of life. They all have a role that is significant and needs to be adhered to. It's when we try to be something or perform at a level that's not in alignment with what we are, that we fall short of missing the mark and leaving our gift on the table of this lifetime. And so one of the things that I kept asking myself was, why is it we do the things we do? And what is it that makes us so different? Like, you know, we always say people hate to be shoulded. You should do this, you should do that. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? Well, what if they could just look at me like, and see that I'm like a bunny rabbit and said, you know, you probably should spend some time alone in your own little space. You might recharge, but we can't see each other through the eyes of nature anymore. We used to be able to.
That's true.
We used to be able to, but primitive man could see what he was looking at. When he looked at a plant or an animal, he knew if that plant was friend or foe. He didn't have a hotline to poison control. He couldn't say, excuse me, I'm looking at a plant here, I need to know if it's going to kill me or not, you know? But he knew what he was looking at, and the reason we know he knew is there really wasn't a lot of white noise around. There wasn't a lot of rhetoric, there wasn't a lot of opinions and judgments, and he was in a survival mode. And so there was a lot of clarity afforded him. The waters were OH negative, the air was pristine, everything he ate was super antioxidant. He was actually poised for success.
Now today we call that organic, but that was
we
just
call
the
it
way
organic,
world,
But, you know, he didn't have a lot of the creature comforts, but he probably was extremely vital to weather those things because of the lack of toxicity around him. Well, we started to evolve, and ultimately what happened is we began to speak. And when we began to speak, we began to shortcut having our needs met, and we could no longer see. And we became what I call the what's in it for me generation. So all of a sudden, we became a little more parasitic rather than communal. And we no longer saw that person as a vital piece of our survival, but more as a source of energy. You know what I'm saying?
I understand that, Well, it's kind of like animals are so instinctual, right? And I've always been fascinated by this, that dogs have a ability to almost pick up on the energy of a person. You've seen dogs take a very hostile approach to someone that sometimes then you say, wow, that is not a really good person, this dog. But that really leads me to another question that I've always been fascinated by, and this is, I think we see all of this in the world of politics. Charisma, or, you know, why is it that some people have what's called, you'd say, a certain charisma that appeals to a large amount of people, and it's not necessarily tied to physicality, because you can be unattractive and be very charismatic. You could be very attractive physically, but not necessarily very charismatic. So what is that? That to me, it's like that charisma is kind of, that's sort of similar to energy, right? What energies are those people projecting?
Okay, it's pretty complicated, okay? If you remember, I said we live in a physical world, and it's governed by a law of three: gravity, electromagnetism, and nuclear force. It's also, other examples are solids, liquids, and gases, omnivore, herbivores, carnivores, endo, ecto, meso, minor, brothers, maximus, you know, vata, pitta, kapha. You can go through all kinds of things. These are all very vital guidelines that tell us how to best address an individual. So when we're looking at a person, I'm looking for magnetism, their electromagnetic appeal. And we have what's called the it factor. You have this. You have the it factor, which makes you a great television host. And it's what we call sunshine. It doesn't have a weight. It has no gravity. It's not a solid or a liquid. And it affords you the ability to light up a room if you choose to. You just walk in. And you also have another characteristic that affords you the ability to present. Not everybody's a presenter. Not everybody's a performer.
But could they be? Maybe they're being held back because they're shy, because there's other impediments. Are you saying that people are just naturally that way, or
people are naturally shy?
Yeah.
People are naturally shy. Shy people need places to recharge. They need to feel protected. It's a more reclusive state of nature.
Interesting.
And when you put them out on stage, they lose energy.
Yeah, that's true.
They lose energy. Where yourself, if we put you on stage, you actually feel empowered. You feel like you got a hit of oxygen when it was over.
Yeah, that's
you
true.
You feel like I'm on point. I'm
well,
on
that's
purpose.
why I gravitated to being a lawyer. I like being in court. I enjoy that. I enjoy the art of persuasion and trying to convince a judge or a jury. And I know a lot of my colleagues obviously go into this profession sometimes for that purpose. Of course, I think some people discover that that's not really where their talents lie, and they want to do something else. But I think so much of what you're talking about today is going on that journey and finding out who you really are.
Yeah.
So I know I took your test, and I'm going to put myself on the spot here a little bit. You had some findings about me, which I was really blown away by in terms of how accurate they were. It was really uncanny.
Right.
Why don't you share a little?
Okay. You're going to be exposed. One of the things that is most glaring is your level of refinement. So you are a gold level of refinement. And people who have high levels of refinement have gold standards. They like to drive nice cars. They like to wear nice clothing. They can't breathe if things aren't nice. They feel out of alignment with reality.
Not a camper.
No, you're not a camper. Definitely not. You don't even go glamping.
That's right.
You know, I mean, okay. But that level of refinement also, it also imposes a certain amount of pressure on yourself in that the way in which you present, you have your own kind of benchmarks that you personally want to attain. So you can be highly critical of yourself as well.
Sometimes I think that can actually be an impediment.
Yes.
Because if you were more free, you would just kind of, I mean, there are people I know who, what you see is what you get. But they're so, I'm almost envious of those kind of people because they're very free. And I think to jury, that's extremely appealing to see someone who's just kind of right out there. It's almost like people perceive that as an element of truthfulness. Like,
well, let's talk about the jury thing a little bit. Okay, if you are defending a gold client, and you have a copper jury,
it's going to be a challenge.
That jury's going to be very judgmental of that client instantly.
Yeah.
And that's just one piece of the puzzle.
That's actually a great point, yeah.
Okay? So in jury selection, you know, it's not just about their opinions about life.
Yeah.
You know, it's about their level of refinement and where there's a periodic table that I'm going to be sharing with your staff today. And that periodic table is quite diverse. Ideally, silvers, you can almost put them anywhere. They're kind of like I always say, what's the best part of an Oreo cookie? You know, it seems to get along with both sides of the fence.
Yeah. So
silvers have a tendency to kind of bend and flex a little bit more.
Okay.
And, you know, from a jury selection standpoint, that's what I would look for. And there are certain indicators that help you identify that in the way that they physically present.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's true. I mean, I think people don't understand this about the legal system is that it really literally comes down to how you connect as a plaintiff or in the case of a defendant in a criminal case, with the jury. The jury,
Absolutely.
I've seen cases where, you know, the jury just doesn't care what the law is, but they will look at the facts and how appealing is that person. And so really so much of that is human interaction. And
Much of the delay in arriving at a conclusion,
yes,
at a verdict, is often compromised by the lack of tolerance among the jurors. You'll have some golds, you'll have some coppers.
Yeah.
The silvers are like, come on, you guys, let's come to an agreement here. And it can get quite messy.
Yeah.
And if you have a copper client, you don't want to have gold jurors.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good
And
point.
that's, like I said, it's just one piece of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
There are other factors that play into that. And if you have highly negatively charged jurors, they're going to be witch hunting.
Well, you've got me fascinated. I'm definitely going to be buying your book off of Amazon. Can you tell our viewers one more time what's the name of the book
thank
and
you.
where they
Yes.
can find it?
The youinstitute.com is where you can go to locate information about our programs and our certification. You can go to Amazon. The book is called You and the Ultimate Life Tool. My name is Dr. Zannah Hackett, so if you put that name in, you'll probably find it quite easily.
Dr. Zannah, thank you so much for coming on today's podcast.
Oh,
It's
thank
really
you for
been
having
fascinating. I
me.
could have you here for another 2 hours.
I can
and
talk
we'd still
forever.
keep learning. Thank you so much.
You're
Hopefully we'll
welcome.
have you back again. And
Oh, I would love to
we'd
come.
love to have you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, folks. Paul Padda signing off for yet another episode of our Paul Padda podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, stay safe.